Well, hi everyone. It's Friday, the 10th of January, 2025, and we're about to talk about a topic that would make you think it was the 10th of January, 1925, because it appears that science and medicine have lost its way, and it's a tragic situation we find ourselves in. Science and medicine appear to be caught up with bureaucracy, big pharma, and also legal entities in this country, including government. And it's almost like they're conspiring against rational, healthy people wanting to make rational, healthy decisions. And you will have all have seen the incredible interview that went for an hour 52 that Michael Gray Griffith on Cafe Lockdown did with our special guest on the panel here today, Kiana Probert, who has a mum sitting in the background, a mum Shelley. Kiana's an incredibly brave lady. She's struggling this morning as we record this because she's been up till 4 a.m. Doing interviews in London and with other podcasters, trying to get some justice for her and her family. If you've watched the interview, and I suggest you watch it, the links are on our page. This story is one that needs to be highlighted because it says everything about the tyranny that we're facing, not only in Australia, but around the world. And so we want to unpack this as a panel. We have joining us today Professor Ian Brighthope, who is undoubtedly one of the shining lights of integrative medicine and has been for more than 4 decades. Ian Brighthope, welcome.
Thank you, Hoody. Good evening, everybody.
We also have next to me on the other side of the screen AFL solicitor and someone who's been involved in the freedom movement who's currently muted, Tony Nicoli. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Underneath me on the screen, we have Julie Sladden, Dr. Julie Sladden, who has been a real voice in all of this, trying to get to reason. And that's what we're trying to do here today, Julie Sladden, is come to reason. And you're now on the Tamar, West Tamar Shire Council.
West Tamar Council.
And you've been working extensively with MP Russell Broadbent, and you've done incredible work with AMPS. We really appreciate having you on the panel again, Julie. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Great to be back.
And below, right at the bottom of the screen, is Peter Johnson, Dr. Peter Johnson from Victoria, I believe, Peter. Peter has been an outstanding, outspoken advocate for all things sensible relating to medicine. And it's really great to have you on this panel too, Peter.
Thanks again, Hoodie. Lovely to be here.
Johnny Larder, we've been watching all this stuff transpire. We've dealt with many situations like this. It seems like the whole system is inside out and upside down. And it's almost like we can say with confidence that welfare and doctor-patient relationship is of no concern to government or bureaucracies in this country. It has been trashed.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Hoodie. And I think the one thing we can thank the COVID scam for is uncovering all this external and internal stuff that's going on that nobody knew about. I mean, it's bubbled to the surface now. And these injustices that we're seeing everywhere in all walks of life are now being exposed. And these governments have got to be held to account. I mean, what we're about to talk about is essentially a walk back in time to Nazi Germany or to the stolen generation in Australia. It's absolutely abhorrent, and look forward to getting to the bottom of what's going on in this particular case.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And Kiana, I just want to, before we go into unpacking your story a little bit more, I just want to thank you for your courage and your strength. And you're a mama bear. There's no doubt about that. And a lot of people jump to conclusions. Oh, if someone's lost their children, they're probably doing drugs, they're probably this, they're probably that. Well, we need to get over that because this can happen to you. If it can happen to someone like Kiana, it can happen to you because you've done your research, you're well versed. And look, I reveal, well, I will reveal that you and I talked the other day about how to approach this from the perspective of Queensland Child Protection. And I suggested that you contact them and just ask them very calmly, what do you have to do to get your children back? What do they want you to do? And I believe you made several attempts to do that. How has that gone?
I have actually had no response. in regard to that. I'm actually getting no response at all in general about anything to do with my children or the case or what's going on. And yeah, anything that I have gotten back is contradictive, and just outright ignores my concerns and questions that I asked previously. So just outright ignoring that and going on to what they would like.
So, Kiana, I think let me just sum up pretty basically where this started. We did interview you and your mum several months ago to highlight the story. It all began in WA when you presented at a hospital. Your son Jaxon was apparently diagnosed, we believe, with leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia.
No,
And AML.
ALL.
ALL, I'm sorry.
No,
So
that's okay.
in the process of receiving that shock diagnosis, you were talking to an oncologist and they wanted to start treatment immediately. And you just wanted time to go home with Jaxon, sit down and think about the ramifications. And you said you wanted to get a second opinion. And what was that doctor's response when you said that?
Her response was, well, I'll just have to red flag you and call DCP. That's
Department of Child Protection. I will have to red flag you and call Department of Child Protection.
yeah.
That was her first response to you wanting to have a second opinion.
Yeah, that is exactly what she said.
And then she went, she lodged a report with Department of Child Protection. And how long ago was that, Kiana?
Oh, that was coming up to 2 years ago now.
And in one sentence, describe what your life and your children's life has been like since that doctor lodged that red flag.
I'd have to say hectic. Absolutely hectic and traumatizing.
Right. Well, I want you to stay with us, Kiana. I know you're really tired, but panel, let me first start with you, Ian Brighthope. You have fought tooth and nail for 4 decades. You have put everything on the line in support of integrative medicine. You have the evidence to prove that second opinions quite often save lives. What is going on with our medical profession in this day and age that a mother can go through this because she wants to get a second opinion? I mean, is the medical profession beyond reproach to that extent?
Well, Hoody, the medical profession has been captured to a large extent by Big Pharma. I think many people know that now. And doctors are actually working and acting and thinking in terms of disease and disease care delivery using drugs and basically drugs only. Once they've made a diagnosis, they actually are obliged to use the medications that they're a part of their protocols. This means that they're no longer practicing as doctors. They're practicing as agents of the state. And I believe that they are agents of the state now. If you try to step out as a doctor and work as a doctor used to work as, in terms of looking after the individual and making the individual healthy and giving them all of the options in terms of their management, then you are attacked by AHPRA and the authorities in this country and the medical boards. They will suspend you, or they will make your life so difficult that you're going back into what I call state care practice. And this has taken the heart and soul out of healthcare. And now we are seeing results of what's happened over COVID. The doctors are behaving as if they are agents of the state and the pharmaceutical industry. And this is what's happening if you step out of this paradigm as a doctor. Then you are marked and you are shunned, or your career is finished, or your progress in the medical profession is slowed down significantly. And this happens nearly all the time. So doctors have to comply with the orders coming from the hierarchical structure that's being created. And we don't have any leaders. We have not had any good leaders in medicine for decades, Hoodie. There have been no leaders who've said, no, we're not going to do this. We are going to continue practicing medicine and using every evidence base available to us to help patients. In regard to Kiana and her son, Jax, they have not received the full and informed information that's required to make a full and informed and free consent to going ahead with this drastic treatment that I believe may have been based on a shonky or faulty diagnosis. So a second opinion is the rights of everybody, a third opinion as well, and an opinion from somebody who may be outside the medical system but within healthcare, who has an alternative view and an alternative way of managing patients. And I know for a fact, and I've written papers about this, I've put up a Substack about the importance of nutrients and their use in these serious conditions, and the deficiencies that may present as a leukemic-like picture. And it's documented. So the whole issue around the medical profession and trust and care now has disappeared because the public know that there are alternatives to drug treatments in many instances, but they're not offered these because the medical profession has got its head in the sand, and the leadership have basically kowtowed to Big Pharma, and they are captured by Big Pharma. And the Royal Colleges, the AMA, they're all captured. And we need leaders in medicine to take us away and bring us back to proper healthcare, where it's not just medical drugs that are given to people, but they are offered options and alternatives, or they're offered both. And that's what true integrative oncology and true integrative medicine is all about. So we now have a healthcare system that's got nothing to do with healthcare whatsoever. We've got a healthcare system which is basically medically orientated, drug orientated, toxic molecular medicine, which means basically we're giving people toxic molecules and injecting them into people unnecessarily in many instances. Yes, I will give credit to the medical profession when they treat trauma patients and we do surgery and anesthetics. We are the best. That's where the credit lies. But just because we can do well in those disciplines doesn't mean to say the rest of medical care is good. It is not good, and it does need complete and utter reform. And that's what we've been trying to do for the last 4 or 5 decades, as you mentioned, Woody.
Wow. John, I think we need to say right here at the outset, your wife is a nurse, you're a paramedic. You know some incredible people in the healthcare system, and I've met a lot of them as well. And in the last few days, since we promoted this panel show, I've been inundated with calls from people telling Kiana's story about what happens, how it goes wrong when they contradict a doctor or ask for a second opinion. And it seems to be tainting the image of medicine in this country to a horrible extent, to the fact that people are afraid. I am afraid to go to a hospital. So confidence has been totally shattered. We've got to say, from our perspective, that we honour those people in the healthcare profession who are doing the right things, who are constantly striving for to be the advocates of their patients. Nurses in particular do a great job in that regard. And I've had a lot of people say that, you know, nurses have come to them in treatment after the doctor's gone and said that they've apologised for the doctor. I mean, this is going on a lot. So we need to say straight up, John, that we support those people doing the right thing in medicine, and we support those people who are caught in the system who want to break out of it and do something good with it, do we not?
Well, it's 100% Hoodie. I mean, everyone who has a relative or somebody in hospital needs to be an advocate for them. They need advocates because, unfortunately, not everything that happens in hospital is the right thing, and you know you need people to be there for you and ask questions. There is nothing wrong with that, and that's all that's gone on here. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Julie might be able to elaborate, but I mean, I don't know why the senior people in the hospital system wouldn't be reviewing that decision at the general manager CEO level and saying, well, what this patient's mother was asking for wasn't unreasonable. What prompted you to react that way to involve the docs people? I mean, it's just completely mad. I mean, Julie, have you ever come across anything like that?
Well, I got to say, every part of Kiana's story was just shocking and traumatic to listen to. You know, in no reality that I've experienced in the field of medicine should I'd like a second opinion follow with, okay, well, I'm going to red flag you with the DCP. It's just not the normal, even a reason. It's definitely not a reasonable response. You know, why would anyone do that? Asking for a second opinion is actually, you know, a fundamental right, and it's you know, it's something that, you know, everyone should consider if they're looking, you know, down the barrel of a potentially, you know, life-changing, you know, diagnosis. And the whole thing about medicine is that, you know, nothing's ever black or white. It's often shades of grey, and there are different ways of treating things. There are different considerations, you know, to take into effect. And health isn't just about, you know, disease, then give it a drug. It's actually much more complex than that, as, you know, Professor Brighthope has alluded to. You know, it's deficiencies, it's our state of health and well-being, it's our social supports. I mean, and to remove a child from their mother during a time of illness is just the worst, I would say, the worst thing it could be done for a child's health, because talk about put the body under stress. But, you know, when you think about the hospital system as a whole, it's been a few years now since I worked in the hospital system. It was definitely bureaucratically top heavy by then. But I think what we've seen happen over the last 4 or 5 years is, especially with the effect of the mandates, that those people who disagreed with the establishment left the system. And so normally you would have, you know, a number of people who were prepared to stand up and call things out. And I just wonder what effect, you know, the mandates and the medical tyranny over the last 3 or 4 years has had on the healthcare system as a whole, especially the hospital system, where, you know, they lost the most amount of people, you know, nurses, and I know doctors too, who took early retirement, or who just, you know, went into a different field of medicine because they simply refused to do what the establishment was telling them. But it was made almost impossible for them to stay. So the people who would normally be, you know, doing these checks and balances on the system and speaking up have now gone. And I think that's going to be devastating. It's going to prove to be devastating, you know, and as Kiana has obviously already experienced.
Kiana, I've got to ask you, because it's going to lead to this. It leads to the method and motive behind the oncologist for red flagging you. When you took Jaxon to the hospital the first time, when you had concerns, you would have been asked what the vaccine status was of the children, not COVID vaccine, but their childhood vaccinations. What was your answer to that question?
They were fully vaccinated. Um, Both my oldest, and my youngest were up to date with their vaccinations when this happened.
Wow. And can I ask, you don't have to answer, but have they been vaccinated for COVID-19?
No, not my youngest, 100%, but my oldest, I'm not too sure if they did that to Jax while no one was there to watch him.
Did anyone ask you were the children vaccinated for COVID?
No.
Right. Okay. So your kids, it's not like we're hearing stories, panel of doctors who are getting really ambivalent when they find out that the parents have not vaccinated their children or kept them up to date with childhood vaccinations. It's like a slur on their character. You're not fit to be a decent parent. We've got to take your children off you. There's a lot of that going around too. Can I ask you, Peter Johnson? You've been a practitioner for how long?
56 years.
56 years. Are you still practicing?
No, no, APRA made sure I didn't.
Peter, how important is the second opinion? Have you seen evidence that the second opinion has turned around outcomes for patients?
Yes, I have, definitely. And particularly if the second opinion comes from outside the mainstream. That's usually where the good, the more amazing events occur is when people actually get an opinion from somebody who's not a conventional practitioner. And I think that's why I've always been in favour of people having a second opinion. And I've found over the years, actually, the ones that do best are the people that really get up the nose of practitioners because they're far more determined to do their own thing.
Wow. So have you ever had to red flag somebody in the instance of child protection?
No. Look, I think going back probably quite a few decades, there were instances of people being taken from their parents in order to give them a blood transfusion because their religion was against it. But I certainly never experienced that personally and didn't like the idea either.
So bodily autonomy is pretty important, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the doctor-patient relationship?
I think it's based entirely on trust, and I think this is. I think what the other speakers have said so far is I totally agree with. It's a bit like doctors have now been tyrannised, so they're tyrannising the patients, and it's all a matter of doing what you're told. 56 years ago, we actually had freedom to treat our patients, give priority to our patients, and treat them according to their wishes rather than ours. We brought our expertise to bear on it, but there wasn't an absolute set regime of treatment. We didn't have all we didn't have to keep up to date, shall we say, with all the latest, and only follow protocols. Which meant that you could have a variety of treatments for people with conditions, but that became narrower and narrower as the years went on. And if you treated somebody unconventionally, you could probably expect that you won't get any support in the courts if the patient sues you. So there was always a bit of difficulty in being different, but that's now become almost impossible. And as Julie put it, it's become institutionalized now. And I think, and this is what we're seeing, a recent survey in America showed that even back in 2020, 79% of people trusted hospitals and the medical profession. In January this year, it was down to 41%.
Now, we're in this situation societally in this country and around the world. Single parent families are becoming the norm. It's tragic. It's really sad. It's a consequence of a whole bunch of stuff, a moral decline, a breakdown of communication between people. People don't talk anymore because the whole fabric of our society has been changed. And as such, we're looking down the barrel of procedures and medical policy that is bringing a whole bunch of stuff in question. So when a single mum presents to a hospital with a couple of kids under her arm and she's stressed and she's doing this stuff on her own and she presents with an issue that's caused stress as well because the kids are unwell. When we hear these stories unfolded, we can forgive a whole bunch of parents, especially single parents, because the minute you present as a single parent, there's something, what's going on here? This isn't normal. We're presenting these people with a perception that if they take their kids to a hospital or to a doctor, they're putting their children at risk because the children may be taken away from them if they give the wrong answer to a question. Julie, how do you see that? You're muted.
So sorry. As I alluded to earlier, in no reality should I want a second opinion follow with I'm going to red flag you. But when you hear Kayanna's story, it's you do have to wonder, when we're looking at the what's in the best interest of the child, that should be what's absolutely paramount at every of these interactions with the healthcare system. And the fact that didn't even seem to come into the conversations that we've heard through Kayanna's story, it just really just my mind boggles, because if you're looking after an incredibly sick child, you need to take all things into consideration. You need to make sure that they're not distressed further. You need to make sure that they're getting the help and support that they need. And I think I heard that Jax was left alone for like 23 hours on occasion, with no real human interaction. Well, that's enough to send, anyone, into a worse state of health. It's just not even reasonable. So to extrapolate that to, you potentially putting your child's health at risk is like a conclusion that your mind sort of starts heading towards, but it's horrifying as well, because we want to be able to go and use the healthcare system. You want to be able to go and see your GP. You want to be able to take your child to a hospital and know that you're going to be believed, and B, your child's going to get the best possible care, and there's not going to be a risk that their health is going to be further subjected to trauma and intervention that is unreasonable in the circumstances. So I almost can't comprehend it. And yet, because I've heard so many stories, as I know people around on the panel have as well, I can comprehend it, because there's been this huge loss of trust in the healthcare system because of what's actually happened when people have interacted with the healthcare system. Just story after story of not being listened to, of things happening that shouldn't have happened. The list goes on. And I think if we don't address this devastating loss of trust in our healthcare system, which really COVID was the big reveal as far as, what was happening, but then it in self-inflicted a trauma. If we don't address this trust, then I think, the next elected leader of this country, if he doesn't address that, then our healthcare system is going to continue to just crumble, because people they're too scared to go and use the healthcare system the way they used to. And I think the health of Australians will suffer even further than it has already.
Johnny, you and Tony have worked together closely on your case. I mean, you guys have been, dare I say, virtually in bed together for the last 3 years, dealing with the issues around your particular matter with New South Wales Health. And I'd really love you guys to have a chat about where the boundaries get blurred in the doctor-patient relationship, and how that relates to child welfare and that organisation. I've got to say, my wife Michelle was involved heavily as a psychologist and a registered nurse in WA in particular, and she was involved in being an advocate for victims of childhood sexual abuse, and she's got a raft of experience in that, 52 years of nursing and whatever. Every time Department of Child Protection gets mentioned in her hearing, this is her quote, and I can guarantee it every time: docs suck. Department of Children's Services suck. She said they get it more often wrong than they get it right. And she goes right off, I can tell you. And we have seen that over and over and over again. So if you guys can have a chat about the legal ramifications of how we untangle this mess and how we can possibly get these kids back to their mum.
Yeah. Do you want me to take it, Johnny?
Yeah, go for it, Tony.
Look, first and foremost, I think one of the key issues here is, and I can tell by the panel, and I've certainly heard Kiana's story as well, is that paramount consideration is the safety of the children, safety and welfare of the children. Okay, that to me is an undeniable issue right here. Obviously, we have Child Protective Services over there in WA coming up with whatever they have. I haven't seen that other than to say that Kiana's story is quite horrific, and you can see what they're trying to do is trying to make Kiana look like she's an unfit parent. In those circumstances, that brings Kiana into the legislative framework upon which they can intervene. But I haven't heard anything in Kiana's story that would legitimate that process other than to suggest that we have the Child Protective Services attempting to state that she's an unfit parent. And one of those issues was an unacceptable risk of harm, which is pursuant to the Act. And under that, asking for a second or a third opinion, in my view, is really seeking due diligence. Okay. This is a parent who's digging deep to say, hang on a second, if there's a misdiagnosis, okay, we could influence some sort of an iatrogenic harm, which leads us down a whole nother path of who is abusing who. And that is a significant risk we need to understand there. On the other side, we also have this issue of um, uh, there's nothing here to suggest that a parent's rights should be taken away. Okay, now there's good case law on this, and in fact the Guardianship and Administration Act of WA acknowledges a parent's capacity to have so, but by bringing her within that legislative framework of the Children Community Services Act, which has been amended in 2021, that then starts to dissipate her rights as a parent. But notwithstanding that, we also need to start looking at the fact that, my view anyway, is when you look at it, there are international human rights implications here as well. Okay, and she certainly does have a right, okay, under the United Nations Convention, the Rights of the Child, Article 9. And now that emphasises the importance of a parent's right to be involved with a child's life. Okay, that is one of those significant issues that we need to understand. Now, even when you look in family law, and I do quite a bit of practice in the family law here, having a meaningful relationship with that child is very important. Now, Julie and Kiana have touched on some issues here that I find significant on an emotional level. And if we tap into that slightly, what we see here is that child being left there for 23 hours. That there, if you did that at home, okay, that would bring you under the attention of potentially the Child Protective Services. But where is their right to do so under these circumstances? And what is the emotional damage being done on that child?
Very good
I think
point.
these are significant issues. We have a child who is now being taken away from, let's call it the primary carer. This is a primary carer who nurtured this child not only through 9 months in the womb, but also post, and that attachment is being stripped away by state intervention, which in my view at this stage seems rather unjustified, not only under Australian law, because even if we look at whether it's the Western Australian or the Queensland law, okay, under the child protections, the parents have a right to be heard. Okay, and those rights have been stripped away from this mother. Okay, I think that's a significant issue. I actually think that many more people need to intervene into this, and we really need to dig deeper, because when we start to dig deep, we start to understand what is the power of the state versus the power of the independent power of a parent. Now, the independent power of a parent saying, hang on a second, I want to know what this diagnosis is. And from my understanding, and Kiana can correct me if I'm wrong, the diagnosis is murky. She's been asking, what is the diagnosis? Give me some clear diagnosis. She has a right to this information. Okay, that's my view. My view is she has a right to this information. She should be provided full and frank disclosure about this child's diagnosis. The fact that they're not doing so reveals a lot of issues, and perhaps Professor Brighthope or the doctors on this panel can also elaborate on that, because a misdiagnosis in a leukemia setting, for instance, could lead to quite serious ramifications in terms of health. Now, real briefly, I just want to really touch on this issue. Now, a lot of people think this case of Mabo, if you all remember Mabo, people thought it was about, land and terra nullius and that, but it also had other implications, okay? And when you dig a little bit deeper into Mabo, it also the sovereignty of the people, okay? And it's the rule to not be imposed upon you by the state, and you can do things, okay, as a parent, independent parent. Now, these are issues that everyone's going past, okay? Now, obviously, they're quite stark in the way we're doing it, but the intervention of a state, especially over the last 4 years, and I think everyone knows that we've been fighting for this. We know because the High Court actually says that we can't impose this upon you. So where are these? It's almost like a cowboy territory at the moment, where and I think that Professor Brighthope said it quite well, where they're just come out, they've become agents of the state. Now we know this because Professor Brighthope and myself, we did a case in 2021 where we had a gentleman on a dentist on life support on a ventilator for many months. And it wasn't until we filed an urgent injunction in that case that we exposed the medications that were being put into this person. And we ended up finding out that he was being provided medications that were creating or causing anaphylaxis and at these anaphylactic type events. And he was actually going downhill, and he was given between 4 to 48 hours to live. This is why we put on an urgent application. Now, what ended up happening there is, despite the fact that we did that, it was opposed by the state. But the long story short is that when there's a misdiagnosis, there are catastrophic consequences that can occur. And in this instance, 4 to 48 hours worth of living. But when we intervened with a whole bunch of doctors, and Professor Brighthope was there and a couple others, and thankfully so, this gentleman is now alive. Okay. He works out 6 times a week. Okay. So there are catastrophic consequences. And the fact that Kiana is coming out and saying, I want to make sure that what you're doing is right, is an absolutely legitimate question. And why do I say that? It's justified by virtue of the fact that the person who saved that gentleman's life on life support was the daughter. And she fought and fought and fought. And God bless her heart, because her father's now there enjoying the fruits of grandchildren. And that is only the result because people stood up, and they stood up to the agents, as we can call them. I think that's the best way to summarize where we're at.
I think, Tony, what you say there about the iatrogenic harm, I mean, we lead back to what Hoodie said earlier about whether the children are vaccinated for COVID. I mean, the legal framework now has taken those decisions, I imagine, out of Kiana's hands to actually have the say about whether her children are vaccinated or not vaccinated. So, I mean, we don't know, but the state could be vaccinating with mRNA in relation to these children and causing harm. I mean, as we know, it's not safe or effective. And it's complete madness that children are being injected with these things. So, I mean, it is crazy, isn't it, Tony? That and I think now we're talking both children, aren't we, Kiana?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just one.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think, John, on that, it's a beautiful segue into the fact, like the way that Australia has placed its child protection protocols, and look, there's good and there's a benefit to it as well, because obviously it's actually its purpose and intention was to save children from harm, and I don't think anyone would dispute that. But this case, I think, falls outside of that, and merely saying, for instance, and let's use the fact that someone didn't vaccinate. In this case, we know that's not the case, but that still doesn't justify taking a child away, because if the parents want to do that, that's what they do. And I think the case of Kassam and what ended up happening there, it went to the High Court, but they said you still have bodily autonomy. Okay, you still have the right to say no. Okay, so yeah, a lot of people looked at that case, and there were a lot of things that happened. Remember, it was about directives, but it still provided for bodily autonomy, and people have gone past those issues. So the High Court has actually acknowledged that that's the fact, and you still have a choice, and you still can do these things. So I think at the end of the day, I think the decision-making process should still fall within the realm of the parent, subject to, obviously, if there are dangers and harms, obviously you can consult with doctors. But then again, getting that second and third opinion, I just find it ridiculous that a parent doing their due diligence is losing their child as a result of wanting to know more about what the condition is. What is wrong with it? I want to know what my condition is. I want to ask that doctor. I'm going to ask the second, and I'm going to ask the third. I have that right, and I'm going to go and do it.
And I think we probably need to make the point that these situations, I mean, Kiana's is in the extreme, but they're not always doctor-led. I mean, the health system is at fault here in many other cases. And I mean, Caitlin brought one to my attention of a colleague of hers, a friend that is an emergency registered nurse, had her first baby and was wanting to breastfeed, was finding that difficult, and went and extended invitations to go through a Tresillian program, got lactate nurses involved to try and facilitate her wish to breastfeed and make that a positive experience. But some bureaucrat, a midwife or somebody, made the call that she was putting the baby at risk because she refused to use the formula. And next thing, she's got docs on the doorstep coming into her house to potentially take the baby away. Now that had a good ending, and APRA, I think, essentially apologised for the way that was conducted. But it gives you an example of how this is going on, and it's affecting people who are health workers as well. It's not just isolated to people walking into hospitals off the street with sick children.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think institutionalized trauma is generational, isn't it? So it can pass down through the processes, and I think from a if you look at the doctor-patient relationship, well, a doctor being, and I think Ian touched on this, so did Julie, is the doctors are being trained in a robotic slash AI almost type fashion where everything else is void, and I better do what's happening. Well, that's not playing the man, that's playing the ball, because the ball is set in motion by APRA and bureaucrats who don't know that patient. Now, what is happening there is that many diagnoses either could go unseen, either misdiagnosed, and this is riskier than everything, because I think the doctors on the panel will understand that iatrogenic effects is like number 3 or 4 in leading causes of death around the world. So let's not forget that. So I think
what you're talking about is medical screw-ups, Tony.
absolutely,
People who don't know what that means.
yeah, iatrogenic is where the doctor misdiagnoses or the medical system misdiagnoses. Again, we go there with trust. Again, trust has been eroded. That has been something that we've seen. But on another point, if I could just touch on this real briefly, is something that struck me is Kiana's contact with the children. Okay. To work in criminology, and I used to interview a lot of people in police stations around New South Wales, and I used to interview young children committing crimes, and they'd be saying, look, I grabbed mummy's needle off the table, and I've injected myself with heroin like 3, 4, 5 times today. Those children would be, after a little while taken away, but given back. There's nothing of that nature. Let's give that as a comparison, okay? So that's one of those issues here. That's not happening here. Okay, let's be very clear about that. Now, on another point, again, when you look at the family law jurisdiction, children are allowed to go back to their parents by virtue of incremental increases in contact, and that could be through a contact centre. That's not even being provided here. Kiana hasn't prevented any danger that I can see, unless that danger is something that's been manufactured by virtue of what they call a risk. But what is that risk? And if that risk hasn't been disclosed, there's another concern right there, because we're having information withheld. That information is now leading to alienation of the children. Alienation of the children pursuant to the Family Law Act is defined as abuse. Okay? But that's not her alienating. She's the one being alienated. So there are a lot of balls in play here. And again, I haven't read the other side, so I want to put that caveat out there as to why they're trying to justify what they're doing. But I haven't seen anything here in Kiana's story, or anything that I've heard here from any doctors that would lead me to suggest that, even 2 hours contact once a week as an incremental start to get those children to understand that their primary carer, who is their mother, who carried these children for 9 months in the womb, is not legitimate enough to take care of these kids. That in itself is almost outrageous, and goes against the international conventions, and even goes against in my argument, would be against the Queensland Human Rights Act, because that has to be read in conjunction with the Child Protection Act.
I've got to say, there's an irony in all of this when we consider, if you ask the average man in the street about Kevin Rudd, you'd say, what will he be remembered for? 9 out of 10 would say for the apology to the stolen generation. We're still stealing kids. What's the good of an apology to a stolen generation when we're perpetuating it in a situation like this, where child welfare agencies, who are largely staffed by inexperienced people fresh out of university, cannot divorce themselves from policy and place themselves in a heart-to-heart situation? This mother could arguably be justified in considering ending her life. She's not going to do that, and nor would anyone want her to do that. But this goes beyond the children. This goes beyond the ripples in this pond, go on and on and on. And what effect does this have on the confidence of single parents, or any parent for that matter, in bringing their children to a state-run facility when there's a chance that they could end up going through what Kiana went through, because they just want another opinion, because they want to learn, because they want to grow? They want to be the parent who's advocating for their children because they care. Kiana wanted a second opinion because she cares. What on earth is going on? And for anyone who might be watching this saying, oh, this is da-da-da-da, whatever, ask yourself this question. Ian Brighthope on the stage in Perth at the Great Debate, the thing we kept pushing was, if you thought someone was tampering with your DNA or your immune system, would you want to know about it? I don't know anyone who's rational who would say no. Because if you said no, you're a bloody idiot. Why wouldn't you want to know? And if that's happening, don't you have a right to find out that it's happening? Isn't there enough confidence lost now? Why is Kiana and her children paying the price for a system that's been damaged by the people who are running it? It's like, why are the vaccine injured paying the price for taking the vaccine the government coerced them and encouraged them to take, and now has forgotten them when they've done it? Have we not grown in anything in this country? Where are we in this? Ian Brighthope.
Yeah. Hoody, can I say something here? I think technology has gone too far. Where is the love? Where is the love and the respect and care for the children, but also for Kiana? Right from the very beginning, there should have been care and respect for her. Not just a second opinion, but she should have been offered support, psychological support as well. There was none of that. There was none of that. And the system doesn't care. The government, there's been a book written about the government doesn't care about you. So we really need to bring back the humanity and the love of rule for clinical review. That is meant to be a part of the human and care system within the Queensland health system. I can tell you that I went through Orion's review with another patient, and the patient was a middle-aged man, a little overweight with diabetes, was put into hospital for a diabetic problem. He was diagnosed by PCR as having COVID. So he was given remdesivir, which knocked his kidneys about to the point where he ended up in intensive care. His wife was pleading for him to have some ivermectin, pleading to the point that they refused to give him the ivermectin. They decided to put him on a ventilator. And then she pleaded with them to give him some high-dose intravenous vitamin C because he was septic. She pleaded and she pleaded and she pleaded. I went before Orion's rule, the head of the intensive care, and the senior doctors there. They didn't give one iota of care about the wife or the patient. All they wanted to do was treat with their protocol. And unfortunately, that patient died. So even though we've got these things in place where Ryan's rule can apply, or they should have indicated to Kiana to contact PALS, I think that stands for Patient Advice and Liaison Service, where she could have, within her rights, had somebody supporting her. There was none of that. The system doesn't care. The individuals within the system do care, but I'll have to hark back to what John said before. It was like the Nazis during the Second World War. They just fulfilled the orders. and people suffered, even though they may have been very good people. So we don't want a system like that. It becomes tyrannical. It becomes more like a civilization that's losing its heart and soul. And you know, I always use this little phrase: "Without courage, there's no truth, and without truth, there are no other virtues." And that's what we've got to come back to. We've got to, as Julie said, we need leaders, courage to come out and speak out, and we need people to come out like you and John, Hoody, and everybody else on the panel to support Kiana. And your support and back her up. And whether it's protests, letters to the newspapers, or whatever, she is the mother of these children, and as Tony has said over and over, you should never ever break that bond between the mother and the children. Even if the mother has psychiatric problems, you give them support. I'm not saying that Kiana's got psychiatric problems. She certainly doesn't. She's just a very stoic young lady and very brave. But even if she was the worst mother in the world, she still should have support from the village, from society.
Yeah.
Not this treatment where the children are away from her for far too long. And 30 minutes on Christmas Day, to me, is whoever decided to give her 30 minutes on Christmas Day should be in jail. It's disgraceful.
Peter Johnston, you've been a GP for 56 years. You've obviously treated very sick children in time. You would have obviously heard of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Did you ever think that you'd be in a situation where the Make-A-Wish Foundation would be not about an acutely ill kid going to Disneyland, but maybe hoping to see their mother for the first time in 2 years?
Extraordinary. John, Kiana's story is just brings out everything that's wrong with medicine, with the way it's being practiced at the moment. It's just terrible. And the case also brings about the dangers of misdiagnosis and mistreatment. I think we've really, the pharmaceutical industry, as I say, has, as Ian put it quite well, has dominated the medical profession, the teaching, the continuing education, producing doctors who just do what they're told, without any thought towards love, compassion, freedom, or truth. And this is why the whole system's finding itself in such diabolical condition. And unfortunately, healing of any injury requires faith. And as now that we've got Bobby Kennedy Jr. in charge of the HHS in the US, we're going to see more and more of just how badly the medical profession and the pharmaceutical industry, particularly, I'm talking about, have mishandled and used toxic chemicals rather than and haven't properly done due diligence in the scientific field. So look, really, I just think I feel on behalf of the medical treatment, we owe a huge apology to and so many people who've been mistreated with COVID vaccinations and everything else. It's a very dark chapter in healthcare these last 4 years.
Yeah, well, that's sad. I've heard this 1,000 times. I mean, and it's not getting any better. Look, we've got Dr. William Bay back in trouble with ARPA again because he spoke his truth. I mean, for goodness sake. how long is this going to go on for, this toing and froing? How long can we live in a system that's dictated by one person with an axe to grind who can make a complaint that brings somebody's career completely undone? It's not only in medicine. It can happen in aviation. It can happen in teaching. Look how often that's happened in teaching. How many teachers have lost everything because of one complaint? I talked with a guy recently who I believe was a teacher, and he was given a review, an annual review, and there were 49 positive statements of affirmation about the year's work that he'd done, and there was one disgruntled student who made an issue out of something that this teacher said in the classroom, and 45 minutes of the 1 hour review was related to that one complaint. And the teacher walked out feeling like he was going to be under the microscope from then on. I mean, how long is this going to go on for? This transcends everything we do in our society. We have gone completely nuts in this country and around the world. Bureaucracy's taken over, but I guess we've got to bring this to a close. And I don't want this to be the last time we convene as a panel to discuss this. We need to keep this going. I want to ask each of you individually, including you, Johnny, where do you see a solution in the way forward? For example, Julie, you might even know this, wouldn't it be wonderful if someone like Kiana could employ an individual to come in and say, can you please manage this case for me? And they would go and advocate and be an advocate between Kiana and the doctors and the professions to get all the data together, to look at this rationally and to involve other specialists in second opinions. Is there anything like that available at the moment, Julie?
Look, there's, as I was thinking about, what are the solutions? That is definitely one that came to mind. And there are little, patient advocacy, arrangements in certain places. Some of them government provided. I've also met a couple of people who provide that privately. And I think this is definitely an era that we're moving into as far as advocating for patients, especially for those, and patients and parents who need to go into the healthcare system to use it, but don't want to have their rights trampled on. And I think the solution to this problem is multiple, but by far now is protecting the rights of the patients and the parents that are having to go in and use the system now. So getting a patient advocate, you can, see if there are any available in your area, see if there's any that are independent of, the bureaucracy. That would be what I'd recommend. And failing that, then a trusted health professional or somebody that who at least knows how to navigate the healthcare system, because they can be your fiercest advocate, apart from, the person or the patient or the parent themselves. But then from a top-down approach, we need to have an absolute restoration of patient rights and autonomy and informed consent in this country. It was absolutely trampled on over the last few years, but I suspect, as I said, the COVID was a great reveal. I think this has been happening for a long time. And I think now we're just getting a bit of an idea of how bad it is. And also, a return of healthcare workers who were actually removed from the healthcare system forcibly because they refused the mandate, to take the jab on the mandates, because I think you'll find that a lot of those will be the whistleblower type in people who stand up for integrity. We need those people back in the system, because they're the ones that help and keep things, checks and balances in place. So those would be the first few steps that I would say need to happen if we're even going to begin to restore healthcare in this country, not weaponized health or whatever it is that we've currently got happening.
There is one thing we need to ask you, Kiana. I mean, that one of the most gut-wrenching pieces of video in that whole interview process was a video taken when I think it was New South Wales Police came and took your children off you. That was gut-wrenching, and should never happen. But in your interactions with the police, have you noticed any empathy towards your situation? Have any of the officers said, you know what, this really stinks that we've got to do this? I mean, was there anything like that?
By one of those coppers, I truly believe that the more things happened, the more he felt like something wasn't quite right Um, he continued to stay with us throughout the entire process, even going backwards and forwards with the two courts and that for hours, trying to get me and my children into court to see a magistrate. I could see it from him that he was like, I could feel the regret of what he had just done and the pure feeling of realization of something else more sinister here is going on. And he stayed with us the entire time, even going over the time that he was supposed to finish. And I felt that from him. With everybody else that was there, I did not feel that. Just that one particular police officer, I felt that from, but not anyone else that was not any other police officer or the other DCP workers that were there in that state to do that felt anything at all.
See, Tony, this is where we need officers of the caliber of Justin Poor and Natalie Vassallo. These are the officers that would conduct themselves in such a way. They do have discretionary powers, or they used to. And you know, when you get someone like this, and I believe that was a sergeant, was that right, Kiana?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was the sergeant, yes.
Right. So he's a senior ranking officer in that station detail to do that. We need officers in there who are prepared to question as well, to get a second opinion. You know, that our officers should say, hang on a minute, do we really need to be there? Do we really need to do this? Do we need to be the ones who are arresting children? I mean, the whole system's breaking down because everyone's focused on policy. It's like, you know. So thanks for alluding to that. But we need to wrap up. As I said, I keep saying it, but solutions, Ian Brighto.
Look, I don't have anything more to add to what Julie has already said, Hoodie. I fully endorse what Julie's said from the top down, as well as from the level of the that Kiana can work at. Certainly needs somebody with her to support and advocate for her and the two children in the same place as soon as possible. I think that that's what I would like to see. And maybe some legal advice from Tony as to how to go about doing that, if it can be done. Somebody mentioned to me taking out what do they call it? Some sort of a legal action against the system, an injunction of some sort. I don't know whether that can be done, but that's something for Tony, the legal beagle.
What are your thoughts, Tony? Solutions from a legal perspective? I mean, desperately someone needs to intervene on Kiana's behalf and just say, look, this is a mother who is of good standing, regardless of her situation. What does she need to do, and what can we assist her in doing to make sure her children are back with her where they belong?
Look, there are a few approaches. One is obviously to gauge exactly what's happened objectively and see, look, okay, this is what they're saying. And again, that's one of the processes I would definitely go through. But in terms of the independence, I'll just extend a little bit on what Julie was saying a little bit earlier about the advocacy services. There are individual processes out there and parties such as My Little Angels. It depends where you are, what they call themselves. There are contact centres, and these are independent parties that come out and they shadow in the background while you play with the kids on the swings for a couple hours, and it's sort of reinforced, and they write independent reports. Okay, we use these a lot in family law in cases where children are removed, and you've got to reintegrate that process, because one of the issues in family law are literally, we had a case not long ago where it's not good to take children away and keep changing them in different places. That in itself is, in my view, goes against the best interest of the child. But then you need to balance that with what the state's saying. This would be their argument, as opposed to say, hang on a second, we're taking the child for, potential risk of harm. But this tug of war, okay, they're coming back, they're going, that again is trauma on the child, okay? And so we need to watch that, and having police, and that to me is something we really need to watch this, because this traumatizes children, and again affects trust down the line. The other side of the thing would be expert evidence. Okay, you can employ these forensic psychiatrists specializing in children's care, and they write reports, and they interview the mother, they interview the children, and the children, for instance, it could be, look, if you had a spaceship and there was only two seats, obviously you've got to relate it to the child. Yeah, okay, yeah, only had two seats. Who would you want to get on that spaceship? And the child invariably will tell you who they love the most. They'll say, I want to take mummy, or I want to take daddy, or these are the sorts of things. These are the sorts of things we need to get in there. From a policy level, and again, I'll put my criminology hat on here. Is from a policy level, we really need to take these policies and we need to have a look. They need to be pragmatic, and they can't be ideological, okay? Because they turn into these almost cultist type behaviours where, someone says boo, and all of a sudden people's lives are destroyed based on hearsay, okay? Now, the last I seen, our legal system was based on the rule of law and evidence, okay, and the best evidence rule, okay. These have all been thrown out the window because someone said, boo ha. Again, patient rights, okay, yes, patient rights, huge, okay. Bodily autonomy, informed consent. These are the issues. And again, the right of a parent to have access to their child. It's not only enshrined in Australian law, but international treaties and laws. Okay, so we need to do that. Again, we had the coercion. We've seen that what's happening around that. Again, terminated workers. Totally agree. We've taken the best and the brightest, and we've purged them because they were doing exactly what you were saying, Hoodie. They were exercising their discretion to say, hang on a second, I think there's something wrong. Now, that should be a duty, okay? It's actually in their code, I believe. A lot of these codes, unfortunately, they're being treated like AI now, and you do as you're told. And again, when something goes wrong, everything comes crashing down. Again, I'm a very big proponent on whistleblower laws. Okay, we need a system here. I've been trying to introduce it since 2012 to 2014. There was a meeting back in 2012 with both major parties, Australian Federal Police and the ANU, about bringing whistleblower laws and incentivise integrity. Okay, right now we've got a culture of concealment. It's absolutely backwards. Okay, we need whistleblowers because they bring this out to the people. Okay, and this is why we need them, and we need to incentivize and reward them. Okay, because without that, and with that reward comes protections. Okay, I've written about that extensively, and again, when we look at removing children, it's alienation. Okay, it's alienation. We're alienating that child from the primary carer. We need to be very careful about how we do this. Policy decisions, those policies need to be pragmatic. Okay, they need to be based on real life issues. Okay, I think from that point, I'll leave it there, and then thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Dr. Peter Johnson.
Some years ago, a patient told me about her doctor. She said, my doctor plays God every day except Wednesday when he plays golf. And I think that was pretty much sums up much of the way medical practitioners approach their patients. It is time that healthcare workers realised, anybody in the healthcare field realises that we're there to give advice, to give comfort, to listen to our patients, understand that they have the power over their own health, and we're only there as advisors if they're willing to listen to us, and if they don't, good on them. Get another opinion. But we do need to change the whole system of healthcare, so we don't have disasters like this particular one with Kiana.
Thank you so much, Peter. And Johnny, anything you can think of solution-wise?
Well, look, Hoodie, I think health has to treat these things with more urgency and greater scope. I mean, when somebody comes into an accident emergency and they're bleeding out, that they go to theatre within half an hour and they're fixed. But they just kick the can down the road on all these other issues in relation to health. The harm that's being caused here 2 years on, because somebody won't intervene and make a decision, is causing untold harm. So, I mean, if a minister can intervene in an immigration matter within 48 hours to revoke a visa for Candace Owens, I mean, how is it that they can't intervene in relation to a case of of such gravity here. I mean, that would be the first thing I'd say. That the federal government needs to take ownership of what's going on here and take responsibility for health, because they just farm it out to the states. They don't care. There's too many players involved, and there's not enough focus given on the whole of health as opposed to the accident and emergency side of things. And look, the other thing that I'd really like to see, and I think that this would have a real flow-on effect to everything and make everyone's life better, is that when they hold these Senate inquiries, Senate hearings, when you see Jared Rennick pushing the buttons of these bureaucrats who can't give answers, they lie, they shadow box, they just give garbage answers, they go around in circles for days, weeks. They should be under oath. Change the system. Get them in there, and if they lie, they perjure themselves, they're locked up. It should be treated with that level of respect. Because I, for one, am sick to death of these people, these highly paid million-dollar bureaucrats, treating us with absolute contempt.
Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. Um, I want to say this, and I want to ask you a question in a moment, or I want to put something to you, Kiana. For the last 18 years, Michelle and I have been running an organisation loosely called Mission Serenity, and we've been involved in trying to restore the destiny of people who've been sexually abused as children, and we've seen that that's led to drug and alcohol addictions, gambling addictions, broken relationships. So many things go wrong. Every time we take people through the recovery process, and we've got our own 12-step recovery program called Recovery Road, and that's going really well now, of all times. Every time we take people through that process, it always goes back to their childhood. It always goes back to dysfunction. They're addicted because they felt disconnected. They're addicted because they felt unloved. They didn't feel worthy. We also know that there are many people who foster children who do wonderful jobs, and as foster parents, they're remembered long, long after their death by the kids that they raised and looked after. But we've also heard some horror stories. Kids are meant to be with their parents who love them. Now, I'm not going to project a situation on you here, but there could come a time when your boys are in their 30s, 40s, or 50s where they need to review the trauma that they've just been through, right? Stay with me. The trauma that they've just been through right now. And they're going to need to know that you were doing everything you could. Now, I want you now to give your boys a message that they may look at in 30 or 40 years' time. What would you like to say to them?
Um, that I am really strong, and it's all because of both of you. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you two, and I will not stop, and I will not give up, because I love you more than life itself. And I will keep fighting for you and everyone else that they do this to. Sorry. Sorry.
You're okay, sweetie. I think you got your message across.
Sorry.
You don't have to apologise for anything.
And I'll make sure that this will never happen again to any parent, any child, anywhere, ever, ever, ever. We will be the face of this. My children will be the face of the change and the beginning of the new. And sorry, we will be on the right side of history. And
I will be remembered and known long after this that every parent has their rights and their children's rights, always and forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiana. This can't end. We can't have this go on over and over again. We have to stop this rubbish. Too many lives are damaged. I mean, your grandkids could be damaged by the trauma that your kids are going through now because of the trauma that your kids have to live through and take into the marriage and the relationships, whatever that go on. We've seen this happen over and over again. So it's time for everybody to wake up. I'd just like to pray and then we'll come back to finish it off. Dear Lord Father in heaven, there are two little boys at the moment in foster care who don't quite understand what's going on. They have to be in trauma because all the photos of them with their mum and their grandmother all indicate that they were happy. They may not have been wealthy. They may not have been rolling in all the great things of life that we put too much value in. But there is love in those photographs, Lord, and there is love in the reaction of this beautiful young lady who's striving to get back into being in a position where she is an advocate for her beautiful boys because she loves them. And Lord, we want those boys to know when they're grown men that their mum was doing everything that she could to make this better. So Father, I ask that you be with Kiana and her mum, that you would watch over her, that you would help her to act wisely, to speak calmly and to seek solution, but to be diligent and assertive and not aggressive. We pray, Lord, that those boys are in the safest of hands at this stage, even though it's not where they should be. We pray that the foster carers are looking after them as though they were their own. And we pray that interventions will take place to separate these welfare organisations and bureaucracies from health and put people back into the primary care of their doctors and their families so that options can be discussed and put in place for the betterment of everyone. We know that you're still in control, Lord, even though the world's gone crazy, and we thank you for it in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Johnny Larder, you've often been heard to say,
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
you wouldn't want to, would you? God bless you, everybody. I want to thank our panel. I want to thank Professor Ian Brighthope for he's been such a backbone for me too in so many ways. And there's a real friendship between us, and we love you, Ian.
Thanks, Hoody. I love you too. Love you all.
Thank you so much. Julie Sladden, always the legitimate face of medicine. Thank you.
Thanks again. And yeah, love you guys. Couldn't do this without you.
Dr. Peter Johnson, the wise old head of medicine on the panel. Thank you so much for being part of this, mate.
Thanks, Woody. And I think your prayer summed it up beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. And Dr. Tony Nicoli.
Oh, come on.
You
Thank
could
you.
be.
Promoted.
No, thanks so much, Tony, for making your time available always. And we really appreciate your inputs, mate. We love you too.
Love you guys. Take care and blessings. And Kiana, hope you go well here. So,
all right, everyone. Now, if you love somebody and you haven't told them, let this be an example. You need to let them know because those boys need to know that they're loved at the moment, and Kiana does too. And she's getting that in bucket loads here. For goodness sake, this is a beautiful country. Don't let it slide because of your apathy. Just imagine that you're Kiana when you review your negative thoughts about her, perhaps. You know, why did she do this? Why did she do that? Just imagine that you find yourself in her situation. I did a devotional this morning for Church Without Walls, and it was about Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, where there's a verse that says, "Come and reason." That's what we're asking everyone in this country to do, to put aside their differences and come and reason, because reason and legality and lawfulness, they're all intertwined and they all need to be separated. Come and reason. So we're calling on everybody involved in this to come and reason, to end censorship, and let's talk about healing our nation and healing our people. It's a beautiful country because you live in it. On behalf of John and this wonderful panel and Kiana, thank you so much for being interested. Thank you so much for sharing this. A big thank you to Michael Gray Griffith and Cafe Locked Out for an insightful interview. It's actually nice to work together on some of these things, and we look forward to more of that. Let's keep it real, and we'll see you very soon again on Club Grubbery. Thank you all for watching, and bye for now.